Hey everyone, what's up? I'm Jack, this is Jill, and we're the Cynical Siblings. Today we're reviewing WandaVision, Season 1, Episode 8, previously on.
It was written by Laura Donney and directed by Matt Shakman.
They're kind of all directed by Matt Shakman, aren't they?
Yeah, it's been a trend.
Yeah, like a theme
or
something for the show.
Yeah.
Alright.
What are you drinking?
I am drinking Longevity. It is a Cabernet Sauvignon from California. What are you drinking?
Rioja. It's a cooperatively owned Argentinian set of growers that do a nice Malbec at surprisingly low prices.
Low prices are good.
You know, it's a nice wine.
And Argentina makes good Malbecs, so
They do.
that's a good combination.
And I like, grower-owned cooperatives. So
Yeah, it sounds ethical and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And ethical and stuff is the best.
Yeah, I care about that kind of shtick.
Alright, so, what did you think of this episode?
I am still trying to figure that out. It was way more serious than previous episodes and twisted everything back around.
Yeah, it did.
The Marvel folks are really messing with our heads in ways that I appreciate because it's clever writing. And I still don't even know I don't know how we're going to do this review. Like, I don't know how to sit here and talk about it. So, sorry. What did you think of it?
I think I had pretty much the same thoughts. There's a lot going on in this series. It's really, this is hard to review because for most of the series we haven't known what's going on and we're just now starting to get clued in. I'm just not sure how to put it all together yet. It's like a mystery inside of a conundrum, inside of a question, inside of an enigma, wrapped up in the unknown, and like left inside of a dark room that you can only find with a map that you have to like get clues to obtain.
Through a Cracker Jack's decoder ring.
Yeah, that's kind of what this series has been like.
Yeah.
So it's been really clear and easy to follow.
Right. No, it's definitely a head job. But in interesting, clever, weird, referential ways. So I do appreciate... I don't understand what they're doing, but
it's good.
Yeah, I'm kind of digging it.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
For the most part. I've had lots of questions and plenty of moments of confusion, but in a good way, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, the writing's really solid. I really enjoyed it. And this episode's no different. It started out so slow, the season, I mean. But it's really ramped up at this point. So that's, I guess, the spoiler-free review. It's a good episode. It does start to answer questions. It also leaves us with questions. But overall, it's a great episode. If you haven't seen it, I have no idea why you're watching a review on it, unless you're someone who wants to know the review before they see it, which, again, is something I don't get, but if that's your thing, do that. Cool. At this point, we are going to talk about this episode with spoilers. So, you have been warned.
Speaking of spoilers, I think we need, because they've twisted things, I think we need to ungloat, not that we gloated.
We did not gloat last time.
Right.
We were right, but in a not gloaty way. We specified that we were saying that we were right without gloating.
Right, but now we're wrong.
But now we're wrong.
And also we were wrong about
So I'm not gloating about how wrong we are. Right? Just like I didn't gloat about how right we are, I will not gloat about how wrong we are either.
Right. So it was all Wanda?
Right. So in the previous episode, at the end, they're all like, it was Agatha all along. And there's a whole song about Agatha all along. Great song, by the way. I love that. It's like she had her own little intro at the end of the episode. So, it's an outro maybe? I don't know. But, so Agatha all along, and we're like, oh my goodness, Agatha's been behind everything. And then you find out in this episode that Agatha has no clue what's going on and is trying to find out from Wanda what's going on, and Wanda's been behind it all along. I guess?
Right.
I'm not sure.
Well, she's a chaos witch, apparently.
But she is in the or has been in the comics. That's we'll go with she has been, because the comics are complicated.
Can you give us some comic-y insight?
The Scarlet Witch is incredibly complicated. She's been retconned in the comic book series at least 3 or 4 times that I can think of, and
even I know a couple of different versions, and I haven't read many of the comics.
Right, like her parentage, I think, has changed 3 times now, and so she's a really, her powers are ill-defined. Originally, she shows up in the X-Men comics as one of Magneto's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
Oh, okay.
Because if you're forming your own mutant freedom fighter team, the best name for those mutants are the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. People are going to flock to that group like crazy. So when you're forming your mutant team, remember to include the word evil. That way people just know that you're the people to join. Anyways, so Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and she's a mutant, hence, evil mutants. And she's got hex powers, which basically just means, like, she kind of makes unlucky things happen to people.
Okay.
Again, really badly defined.
Kind of the opposite of what's her name that, like, has really good luck.
Domino.
Thank you.
Right. So Domino, called Domino because everything falls into place for her, she doesn't... But Domino doesn't activate her powers. Like, Wanda, it's a conscious decision to hex something. It's a hex. She puts a hex on someone. She curses them. That's where all the language around hexes has come in with this episode. So in Wanda's case, it's very intentional. She chooses to hex someone. In Domino's case, like, just things always fall into place for her. It's not a conscious decision, as near as I can tell.
Okay.
So that's kind of how Wanda starts, and then later on we find out that the way she causes misfortune is through magic, and that her mutant power actually just gives her natural access to magic. She doesn't have to train to be a witch or a wizard. She just does it. And then we find out that she's a chaos mage. And then we find out that she can completely alter all of reality. And then at some point in time, I think she's like this Nexus being. And then, I don't know. Wanda's complicated in the comics.
Right. So she's been a chaos being in the past.
Yes. That's been how her powers have been defined before, as like a chaos wizard or chaos witch.
Has it meant anything in particular that is striking you for how they're representing it now? Like, are you getting a clue to where they're taking this, or is this something new?
Well, I think the one problem that you have is that, like, the term chaos witch is so poorly defined in the comic books to begin with, or chaos wizard, or chaos magic. I think she can harness chaos magic. So she affects probability. That's it. And somehow that leads to completely changing reality. Which, that's cool. I wish I could alter probability so much that, like, I could change the whole universe. Apparently Wanda can.
Yeah.
But that's as far as I think of what it means in the comic books. How they're applying it to, this series. Obviously, she's altered reality. She's got her own. It's even in a hex. Her hex is in a hex. That's incredibly convenient. But no, it doesn't really give me a clue as to what the writers are thinking or doing. Unfortunately, in this case, okay. I don't know where we're going with this.
I mean, no surprise, because the writers are clearly baiting and switching all over the place. Yeah, so, okay. I was just curious if I don't know, if any of these things meant anything. But you said she's also a Nexus being, which, of course, the commercial, which we forgot to acknowledge in the last review, which, was sad. The Nexus, basically antidepressant, comes up. What is a Nexus being?
She effectively exists across all realities.
Okay.
Like, there's no reality without a Wanda Maximoff.
That's intense. Is that how she sees herself in the Infinity Stone?
Yeah, we got to get into the Infinity Stone scene here. I don't know if we want to jump right into that right now, but in terms of like what is a Nexus being, like it's a being that exists across all realities at once. I can't remember where that comes out of in the comics, but I think at one point she's defined as a Nexus being. Which does, I think, tie into that commercial that we saw, where they it's an antidepressant, and then they say that thing like, remember you're not the center of the world unless you actually are. And so I think that's what they're relating to, is she's not the center of the world unless she is. Because she can do that.
Yeah, it seems like she can. Apparently she can just, like, create individuals. Like Vision. So that happened.
Right. Yeah, we got to actually break this episode down. This was really something else.
Yeah.
Some of it was really, well, I think we should touch in on some of like the trauma aspects of this, because we really walked through the stages of Wanda's trauma and how it just kept getting worse. We see the bomb not go off. We see her parents die.
We see the blinking red light.
The blinking red light, which is it's Stark Industries. That's a callback to the first commercial.
Right, that she had to stare at for 2 days.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we see her get sort of brought into the Hydra organization, and there's commercials 2 and 3 that deal directly with Hydra. And then we see, well, we got to talk about her getting her powers, but I want to get there later. I want to stick to this grief comment and trauma comment. And then we see how she's handling things after Pietro dies, which is badly, And then we see how she deals with things after Vision dies, which is also badly. So,
well, after Vision dies, and then after she also gets blipped, and now it's 5 years later.
Right. So she's having a bad moment.
Yeah, that is also a head job.
Right. So she's not doing well, right?
Right.
So I really like the way that they are walking us through piece by piece the trauma that she's experienced and how she got into this headspace. I think that's really good writing.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to something that I was thinking about in our last review, which is how, the sitcom style starts off so, there's just so little substance to it. They're just so, I barely even know what, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time getting words out, but I'm just thinking about the ways that the Dick Van Dyke Show and I Love Lucy and those, even through to Bewitched, just don't make a lot of sense. We harped on this a lot in earlier reviews, and then you get into this sort of grittier and grittier and grittier process to where you get to either reality TV or sitcoms where characters talk to the camera as like in a sort of hybrid of sitcom and reality TV. And now it's 2021 and everyone has a vlog, even us apparently. So anyone can grab a camera and say things. So we have windows into each other's living rooms and also bedrooms, and I don't mean that in a sexual way. Oh, of course, that too. But, we just have these windows into each other's lives, and we do demand a grittier type of TV. We do demand a more realistic type of TV and media, while also maintaining this weird contradictory need for assurance and a happy ending. So that's a psychological thing to think about for our culture. But in any case, I think that the way that they're dealing with trauma, let me just one sentence, that they're dealing with trauma is coming out of that fantasy-based sitcom.
Why is our assumption, though, that our reality shouldn't be happy? Like, why is it that, like, when we're talking about reality, we always grab for the word gritty? I just noticed this culturally. Like, we, as a culture, like, if it's real, it's gritty. Because reality has grit, right? But why is that our cultural assumption?
I'll do you one better.
Like, what kind of psychological, like, state are we in that our expectation is that reality is going to be hard? Like, that's where we start from.
I'll do you one better, though. Why do you assume that gritty and hard are the same thing?
Because that's how we culturally use them.
I don't.
I mean, technically, like, if you want to say they have different definitions, I agree. Technically, from a technical, we look this up in Webster's, and we read off the definition, and we go, these are not the same word. You are correct.
But contextually.
But contextually, the way we use them.
I don't know that gritty and hard are the same thing. There is definitely a cultural element where we use them that way. And I think that that's because we're coming out of this perspective that we should somehow strive to achieve Leave It to Beaver, which doesn't even make sense for most people's actual lives. So as we're trying to figure out how we want ourselves and our media to be represented, because of course our media is just a giant conversation between all of us, I think that moving toward gritty I see it more as realism than as hard or bad.
Okay. That's a conversation that has nothing to do with what we're currently talking about. We are way off track. All right, let's get us back on track. We will have this debate later, you and I, but right now, Wanda's trauma. I think it's great the way they depict it. I also think it's really important that we're depicting trauma. I think, and I know you and I have had this conversation outside of YouTube, but for so long, TV shows have these characters going through these incredibly traumatic events. And then, any action TV show. It's just one traumatic event after another. And there is, like, no psychological care for these people. These heroes just get up the next morning, go on to the next horrific event, and then wash, rinse, and repeat.
I think worse than the fact that like, trauma doesn't get depicted effectively is the underlying assumption that in order to be a hero, you have to be able to go through all of these traumatic events and also get up the next day and I guess just like forget that they happened or something. We complain about it all the time, especially in Star Trek and especially in the Next Generation, where they go through all kinds of horrible things where, I don't know, their DNA gets resequenced or, they go invisible for a while, or
they get turned into children. In Voyager, they get turned into space salamanders.
There was that.
In DS9, they get shrunk.
Yep.
I mean, like any of those series, there should be massive trauma for these people. DS9 deals with war. Voyager, they're lost. TNG has a lot of strange things happen to its characters.
All the time.
I think Enterprise started to deal with some trauma. I remember after the Xindi season, Captain Archer was dealing with some of his trauma. So I think like we had some early examples of people dealing with trauma there. But I've noticed lately that it's become more common to accept the fact that our heroes are at some point in time going to have an emotional meltdown because you can't be surrounded by all this death, destruction, be on the edge of annihilation all the time, and just wake up the next morning and be like, oh, okay, everything's fine.
Yeah, and believing that you can or should live that way in order to be strong or grown up or whatever is incredibly toxic. So I like the way that they're handling that. I like the way that they're handling the individual character trauma. Obviously, this is focused mostly around Wanda, and we get a real good walkthrough of every point of her trauma. At the same time, though, when Norm gets, like, de-Wandified and comes back to himself, like he starts to freak out.
Oh yeah,
in ways that totally make sense.
This is traumatic for everyone else.
Yeah. Even Darcy acknowledges, like, wow, that really sucked, and she's only in it for a few hours.
Right.
And she knows what's going on, and has tools and allies to work through this. Someone who's just been completely isolated. I mean, being isolated from your own mind. It's rough. So the way that they're dealing with those things, and the way that Wanda describes her grief in the wake of Pietro's death, I thought was really poignant. This sense of, like, she keeps trying to get back up, and it just is going to overwhelm her again, and it's just going to overwhelm her again and again. I just thought that was a really powerful description of grief and of trauma and of emotional struggle. So I really like the way that they're moving through some of that. I think culturally really need that.
I agree. I think it's really good. I think it's really powerful. And this has always been one of the strengths of comic books, is that it can have this very kind of, I don't know, operatic level to it that's got a lot of emotional undertones. They're really dealing with character concepts and how personalities develop, how psychology develops under these situations. I don't know. I just think they're doing a really good job with this. Let's talk really quickly about how Wanda gets her powers, the fact that they may have retconned how Wanda gets her powers, and the fact that she sees herself in the Infinity Stone.
Yeah, which I did not catch.
I didn't catch it until the second viewing.
That was, yeah.
So, in the comic books, Wanda is a mutant. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Wanda supposedly gets her powers when she's exposed to one of the Infinity Stones via some experiment by Hydra.
It's not defined that she has no powers prior to that. They're just latent.
Well, the implication is that it's the exposure to the Infinity Stone that gave her her powers. There's no implication thus far that she's a mutant.
And yet Agatha suggested she was a baby witch for changing the probability on the Stark explosive.
Right. So now, ambiguous. Right, but that's why I'm saying is they've kind of retconned that. They've kind of said, hey, it turns out she may have had these abilities all the time. Are Pietro and Wanda mutants in this universe? I don't know. But it's suggested that she is, and then when she sees the Infinity Stone and it's doing the big light show, and right before she passes out, she sees the silhouette of a woman, and the silhouette is a silhouette of Scarlet Witch herself with the, I don't know what to call that headpiece that she wears, but that weird it's got the weird M-shaped headpiece. Mm-hmm. That's what it looks like. It's a silhouette of mm-hmm. herself, but in the Scarlet Witch costume.
Yeah, you have to pause that to see it, though.
Which we did.
Well, yes, but just a tip, because I saw it twice, and wasn't able to focus in closely enough to see the headpiece.
Yeah, but I thought that was really cool. I don't know what they're trying to say with that, except that, she's a Nexus being and she exists across all time and space, and I don't know, maybe the Infinity Stones know that?
Yeah, and, well, it's why she didn't die, so I guess there's that. And I think it's interesting that they're doing this to, one, expand the MCU. Back in 2008, when Iron Man happened, I had no imagining that they would bring the Skrull into all of this, and all of the interdimensional stuff that happens in some of the X-Men comics and that sort of thing. So apparently, I'm wrong, and I can own that. They are. To
be fair, it's 13 years later,
and we're on Phase 5. So they probably didn't think they were going to get here either.
Is this Phase 4 or Phase 5?
I'm pretty sure it's Phase 5.
Okay. I don't know, I've lost track.
But I haven't looked it up recently.
It's a good phase. They're going through a good phase.
There you go. As opposed to the bad phase.
Yeah, we haven't had MCU hasn't gone through a bad phase. They've had like stronger and weaker movies, but they haven't
Yeah.
done anything
Legit bad.
that I would define as bad.
Right. They haven't done X-Men 3.
No. Or the first Wolverine movie.
I hear Dark Phoenix was worse. I never saw it.
I still have not watched Dark Phoenix.
Yeah.
Yeah, after X-Men Apocalypse, I was...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. So I think it's interesting that they're opening up these possibilities, because if they're going to do this Nexus thing and open up the possibility of alternate universes, which I think DC has technically done first anyway, so there's that. The audience is, or an audience is primed for it. Then...
Oh yeah, there's the DC Arrowverse and then the Supergirlverse, and
Mm-hmm.
so they've already done like...
And all the crossover.
And all the crossover, yeah. They've already done some of that over in DC's
It's a
TV
little
series.
niche, but it's there, and between that and the comic fans and the way that they're leading into it in the MCU proper, like I think that it's not much of a leap at this point.
I think it's something they can dig into if they want to do a multi-universe thing. The Doctor Strange movie is supposed to do a multiverse thing, so we'll see exactly what they do with that. They kind of touched on it when they did the animated series. Not kind of. They did touch on it when they did the animated movie, the Spider-Verse movie.
Mm-hmm.
So they've already kind of done some stuff with it, but we'll see what they do from here on out.
And apparently Loki is supposed to get into some of this, or has some potential to get into some of this, and then there's the What If series. So, however they decide to do that, and I'm curious then how or if these web series effectively cross over into the movies. I mean, do they expect everyone to have seen all of these series in order to understand what's going on in future movies? I'm not sure.
I don't know. They kind of expect you to watch all of the previous movies whenever you go to see a new Marvel movie. Like, following Marvel, while it's a lot of fun...
It's a lot of work.
It's actually a bit of work, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a little bit of like, oh, I can't go see this movie yet because I didn't make it to the last movie, so I gotta now go back, watch, and now I can go watch this new one.
Which is way easier with Disney Plus, so.
Yeah, and at least Marvel movies are good, so you do want to go back and watch anything that you've missed.
There's still a couple I haven't seen.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
I shouldn't tell you that. You're gonna, find some way to strong arm me into watching them or something.
Well, which ones haven't you seen? Wait, hold on. Let's finish this review. So, before we go down another tangent, Hayward is a terrible human being.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's manipulating Wanda emotionally and psychologically.
Oh, yeah.
He was trying to get her to use her powers on the Vision.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason. And then he lied to everyone. We now know he lied to everyone. So, earlier in the season, he said that Wanda stole Vision's body, or suggested that he had done that, and showed a videotape of her breaking into Sword. And then in this episode, you find out that he invited her into that room, and okay, she broke some glass. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna let the grieving woman have that moment, though.
I was about to say, okay, there was some decorum that didn't happen.
Right.
She also didn't harm anyone.
Right.
So yeah.
She floats down there with her powers, and she's checking Vision out, and she's like, oh, he's really dead. She doesn't sense anything, and she leaves the Sword Institute without Vision's body, and is kind of ready to... I don't know. I shouldn't say ready to let go. She goes to Westview right after that, and then creates the whole situation that we're currently in immediately after that. So she doesn't really let stuff go, but she doesn't steal the body. She doesn't try to resurrect him right there, which is what it seems like Hayward is egging her on to do. It seems like he's like, well, if I had the power to bring my soulmate back to life... And how does he know she has the power to do that?
Well, this is what makes me wonder, is he... So, this feels really unwise, right? Like, he seems more savvy than this, unless someone else is either pulling his strings, or he thinks that there's a greater power behind him. Because messing with Wanda this way seems really unwise. Like, he's a jerk. Like, he's a horrible person.
Yeah, he is.
But he's also jaded. So his wisdom check isn't quite there for me.
Okay, jaded, yes, but I'm sorry. I don't care how jaded you are. You still don't lie about people and like suggest that they committed terrible crimes when they didn't.
Well, that's where the jerk part comes
yeah,
in. Like, he's a jerk and jaded.
I can be pretty jaded in life, right? You know, I am one of 2 cynical siblings. Let me tell you, I've got jaded down. But that doesn't mean that I suggest that, you know, other people have done terrible things that they haven't done. That's just a jerk move.
Right. So not to take away from his jerkness, I'm just saying that if you're going to do this kind of like big scheme to get the Vision, I kind of hate the way that he says it with an article in front of it, because you get so used to Vision or even Viz. So the way he says the Vision, just like others' vision, makes him a computer, effectively, you know.
So what about the possibility? So in our last video, someone posted a little comment, a really long,
very long comment.
That I very much appreciated. It was very interesting. But one of the items in there was that there was a Hayward Ultron connection.
Right.
Which I was thinking when I read it, like, I don't see anything in the writing right now that suggests there's a relationship. But now with this episode, I'm starting to think, like, maybe there is a Hayward Ultron connection. Maybe, because so Ultron creates Vision in the second Avengers movie, the Age of Ultron movie. And Vision never gets a complete download of the Ultron personality into his matrix. So when he does kind of come to life, wake up, whatever you want to call it, he doesn't have Ultron's personality. He has his own personality. Now that Hayward's resurrected the Vision, but the Vision doesn't have the Infinity Stone, what programming did he use? Did he use the Ultron programming to resurrect Vision? And if he did, is Vision, like, did he resurrect Ultron? Like, now I'm concerned that Ultron's back.
Right.
And that Ultron's in a Vision body.
Right.
So that would be incredibly bad.
Right. Exactly. And that's what I mean about, like, some strings being pulled. Like, if Hayward is getting some kind of guidance or has some reason to think that this is a good idea, has some sense that he has a control over this situation, because we all know he doesn't, right? Like, just from watching his thing, if he activates Vision, or fake Vision, Ghost Vision?
Ghost Vision. I do like that he's
Vision, because he's fake Vision?
Well, no, this is the real Vision, though.
Well, that's true.
Right, because Pietro, fake Pietro, Pietro, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But this is more real Vision than the Vision we've been following, maybe? I'm not sure.
That's an interesting debate, actually.
I agree. I think it would be a great debate.
Yeah. Who is more of a real Vision?
Who's more of a real Vision?
What is your definition of real? Is it the physical corporeal self, or is it the spirit and soul and intellect of the entity?
Because the Vision within the Hex keeps operating with his own initiative. So I hypothesize that Wanda could have infused his own consciousness into this construct, which means that his consciousness is not in the Ghost Vision construct. And by the way, I really like that they've got the all-white Ghost Vision thing going on, because in the comics there is a period of time where Vision does have this like all-white body. It's really it's a cool look. Anyways, it's definitely a callback to that, and I really appreciate that. But where is his consciousness? Is it in the Hex, or is it in the old Vision body? Like, where is the real Vision?
Right. So then that brings up the issue of, if Ultron or anyone else is pulling the strings on this, and that's the effective programming that Vision has, but Vision still has some kind of consciousness, are the two compatible? Does one just completely supplant the other? Is all of Vision's consciousness now in the Hex?
Right. Okay. Wow, we covered a lot there.
There was a lot to cover.
I know.
This episode was.
It was heavy.
Yes.
It was deep.
It
was deep.
But it left so many annoying questions.
I know, but like that's WandaVision. Like that's been the entire series.
Yep.
All right. This is the end of this review. If you have anything to add or hypothesize, please leave a comment below. Otherwise, like, subscribe, click the bell, do all the things you know you're supposed to do on a YouTube video, and cheers.
Thank you and cheers.